Picture yourself stepping into the heart of an ancient marketplace, the air thick with the scent of spices, the sounds of haggling merchants, the vibrant chaos of goods changing hands. You move through the crowd, feeling the worn stones beneath your feet, completely unaware that just below the surface lies another world, a hidden realm of tunnels, chambers, and secret passages that stretch out like a silent, parallel city. This isn't some forgotten myth or accidental excavation. It's a deliberate, brilliantly engineered response to the very pulse of commerce itself. For centuries, trade didn't just happen above ground. It literally shaped the world beneath it, creating sprawling subterranean networks designed to protect, preserve, and empower economic life in ways that still astonish us today. In this journey, we're going to venture deep below the streets of history's greatest marketplaces, from the forums of Rome to the bazaars of Constantinople and far beyond, to uncover how commerce drove some of the most ingenious architectural achievements of the ancient world. These spaces weren't just dark storage holes. They were climate-controlled vaults, secure trading posts, and even social hubs, all carved out with a sophistication that speaks to the brilliance of their creators. We'll explore how merchants battled spoilage, theft, and extreme weather by going underground, and how these practical solutions evolved into complex systems that supported entire economies. You'll discover engineering marvels that allowed goods and people to move unseen, and mysteries that archaeologists are still unraveling today. So come with us as we peel back the layers of time and stone, descending into the secret world beneath ancient marketplaces. Together, we'll see how the relentless drive for trade didn't just build cities above ground, it sculpted their very foundations, leaving behind a legacy of innovation, intrigue, and incredible hidden spaces waiting to be rediscovered. This is a story of human ingenuity written in rock and shadow, and it's one you won't want to miss. Think about the earliest merchants thousands of years ago. They weren't just selling goods, they were battling time and the elements. Without refrigeration or secure vaults, how did you stop a precious harvest of grain from rotting in the sun, or protect a shipment of exotic spices from thieves? The answer, it turns out, was right beneath their feet. The very first underground storage spaces began not as grand architectural projects, but as simple, practical pits dug into the cool earth. These were the original root cellars of the ancient world, and they emerged from a basic, universal need: survival. In an era where a spoiled harvest could mean famine, and losing valuable trade goods could ruin a family, finding a way to keep things cool, dry, and hidden was a matter of economic life or death. This was especially true in regions with harsh climates. In the scorching heat of the Middle Eastern sun or the bitter cold of Mediterranean winters, the earth provided a natural, stable temperature. A few feet below the surface, the frantic temperature swings of the outside world smoothed into a consistent, cool haven. This natural insulation was a game changer. For a merchant in ancient Mesopotamia, storing olive oil in a subterranean pit meant it wouldn't turn rancid as quickly. Burying sacks of grain protected them from both the punishing heat and from pests. It was a brilliant, low-tech solution that harnessed the planet's own physics to protect precious resources. We have remarkable archaeological proof of this ingenuity. At the ancient Sumerian city of excavations have revealed deep, plaster-lined pits located right in the middle of what would have been bustling commercial districts. These weren't just random holes, they were carefully constructed storage cellars, strategically placed for merchants to easily deposit and retrieve their goods. Even earlier, in the impeccably planned streets of Mohenjo-Daro, part of the Indus Valley civilization, archaeologists have found evidence of underground spaces associated with large central courtyards, spaces that likely served as marketplaces. This suggests a deliberate urban design where commerce and subterranean storage were integrated from the very beginning. But these spaces were far more than just functional holes in the ground. They represent some of humanity's first conscious steps toward complex urban planning. The decision to invest labor and resources into digging out and reinforcing these chambers shows a shift in thinking. It marks the moment when societies began to actively shape their environment to support and stabilize their economy. Having a secure, reliable place to store surplus goods meant a city could weather a drought or a poor trading season. It allowed for the accumulation of wealth beyond mere daily subsistence, which in turn fueled further trade, specialization, and growth. This simple idea, to go underground, was a quiet revolution that paved the way for every elaborate subterranean marvel that would follow. If those early underground pits were the first whispers of an idea, the Romans were the ones who shouted it from the rooftops, or rather, built it deep beneath them. They took the simple concept of subterranean storage and transformed it into an art form, a true science of preservation and security. Their tool for this was the horrea, a network of massive, state-sponsored warehouses that became the absolute backbone of Rome's sprawling economy. Imagine these not as dank, dark cellars, but as the ancient equivalent of climate-controlled, high-security distribution centers. They were the vital organs of the empire, and much of their critical function happened underground. Primary enemy was always moisture. A shipment of grain, the lifeblood of Rome, could be ruined in days if left in a damp environment. So Roman engineers devised an ingenious solution: suspended floors. They built these underground storage rooms with a second floor raised on short pillars called pili. This created a hollow space, a hypocaust, between the true ground and the floor where goods were stored. Air could circulate freely underneath, pulling moisture away and keeping everything above bone dry. It was the same principle they used to heat their bathhouses, but here it was applied to create the perfect dry, cool environment for preservation. Along with this, they integrated sophisticated ventilation shafts that channeled fresh air throughout the chambers, preventing the stagnant, mold-friendly conditions that could destroy entire stocks of food. This wasn't just building, it was environmental engineering on a grand scale. And of course, what good is a perfectly preserved stockpile if it can be easily stolen? Security was paramount. These horrea were fortresses. Their walls were massively thick, often with minimal ground-level windows, and those that did exist were placed high up and barred with iron. Entrances were heavily guarded and designed as bottlenecks to control access. The very design sent a clear message: what was inside was incredibly valuable and protected by the full might of the Roman state. This reflected the immense economic and political importance of these stored commodities. Controlling the grain supply meant controlling the population's loyalty. A well-fed Rome was a stable Rome, and a hungry Rome was a city on the brink of riot. Location was everything. These warehouses weren't tucked away on the outskirts of town. They were strategically positioned right next to the bustling forums and major marketplaces, and crucially, near the Tiber River for easy transport. This was all about logistics efficiency. A ship could dock, its cargo of Egyptian grain could be offloaded directly into a horrea for safekeeping, and then it could be distributed to merchants and citizens with minimal delay or additional cost. This seamless integration of transportation, storage, and retail was centuries ahead of its time. As archaeologist Simon Ellis has emphasized, this system was the key to Rome's economic resilience. It allowed the empire to manage massive surpluses in good years, creating a buffer against the inevitable shortages caused by drought, war, or poor harvests in the provinces. The horrea were the empire's emergency savings account, its insurance policy written in brick and mortar. The brilliance of this Roman model didn't fade with the empire. The core design principles raised floors for dryness, strategic ventilation, robust security, and prime logistical placement became a blueprint that echoed through the centuries. You can see its influence in the medieval guild halls of Europe and the vast warehouse districts of later trading powers. The Romans proved that commerce wasn't just about moving goods, it was about mastering the space in which they were kept. They showed the world that to control trade, you sometimes had to build down, not just up, creating a hidden underground architecture that supported the glorious world above. But the Roman genius for harnessing the underground didn't disappear. It was inherited, adapted, and magnified by another empire that understood the vital link between commerce, survival, and architectural grandeur. Travel now to the heart of Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city that was arguably the greatest trading hub the world had ever seen up to that point. Here, beneath the feet of merchants haggling over silks and spices in the grand market squares, lay one of the most breathtaking subterranean structures ever built, the Basilica Cistern. To call it a water tank is like calling a cathedral a roofed in space. It completely undersells its scale, its ambition, and its profound connection to the economic life of the city. Constructed in the 6th century under Emperor Justinian, this vast underground chamber is a true palace of water, stretching over 140 meters in length and held aloft by a forest of 336 marble columns. It was designed to hold an astonishing 80,000 cubic meters of fresh water, shipped in via aqueducts from sources over 19 kilometers away. This wasn't just a backup supply, it was the city's life insurance policy. In an era of frequent sieges, a secure internal water source meant Constantinople could withstand blockades that would have crippled other cities. For the merchants in the markets above, this reliability was everything. A stable water supply meant a stable population, and a stable population meant a reliable market for their goods. It was the ultimate foundation for a thriving commercial economy, yet its role extended far beyond simple reservoir duty. The constant, cool temperature of that immense body of water created a natural cooling effect for the structures and spaces around it. While direct evidence is still being pieced together by historians, it is highly plausible that merchants with shops or storage cellars near the cistern's vicinity benefited from this natural refrigeration. Perishable goods, whether it was grain, wine, or delicate textiles, would have lasted longer when stored in the earth-cooled environs influenced by the cistern's presence. Furthermore, the water itself was a resource for industry. Tanners, dyers, and other craftsmen whose trades were essential to Constantinople's commercial output would have relied on this steady supply for their processes. The cistern didn't just quench thirst, it fueled the workshops that supplied the markets. What truly sets the Basilica Cistern apart and makes it such a powerful example of commerce shaping architecture is its breathtaking beauty. This was a purely utilitarian structure built for a practical, life-sustaining purpose, and yet it was constructed with an awe-inspiring sense of grandeur. The columns were repurposed from even older classical temples, a conscious choice that lent the space a sense of timeless majesty. The famous Medusa head capitals, placed upside down and sideways, are a whimsical, almost defiant display of artistry in a space that didn't strictly need it. This proves a crucial point. In these ancient commercial centers, even the most functional architecture was worthy of beauty and investment. The wealth generated by trade didn't just build simple warehouses, it built enduring, magnificent infrastructure that served the entire city. The cistern's grandeur was a statement of the empire's power and stability, which in turn attracted more traders, creating a powerful cycle of economic and architectural growth. This seamless fusion of brute utility and delicate art, all existing beneath the commercial heart of a city, shows us that for these ancient builders, supporting commerce was a pursuit worthy of both genius and grandeur. Now let's journey east along the Silk Road, where the needs of long-distance trade gave rise to one of history's most ingenious and welcoming institutions, the Persian Caravanserai. Picture a lonely, sprawling fortress rising from the dusty plains, a beacon of safety and rest for a weary caravan that has spent weeks crossing scorching deserts or treacherous mountain passes. These were not just simple inns, they were complete commercial way stations, the vital beating hearts of the Silk Road, and their brilliance often extended deep into the earth itself. While the Romans perfected storage within their cities, the Persians mastered it along the thousands of miles of trade routes that connected continents. The design of a caravanserai was a masterpiece of logistical planning. Typically square or rectangular, they were enclosed by a formidable outer wall with a single, heavy gate that could be barred shut at night. Inside, a large central courtyard provided space for camels and horses to rest, surrounded by a two-story arcade. The ground level housed stables, workshops for repairing carts and gear, and small shops, while the upper level offered Spartan but secure lodging for the merchants and travelers. But the most critical features for protecting a merchant's livelihood were frequently hidden from view. Beneath these courtyards and buildings lay extensive subterranean levels, cool, dark, and secure cellars specifically designed for storage. In the brutal climate of Central Asia, where daytime sun could ravage delicate goods and nighttime cold could be equally damaging, these underground chambers were a lifesaver. The Earth's natural insulation provided a stable, temperate environment perfect for preserving everything from bulk shipments of grain and dates to incredibly valuable, delicate commodities like silk, which could be damaged by excess heat and light, or spices like saffron and pepper, whose potency and value would plummet if they spoiled. But protection from the elements was only half the story. The Silk Road, for all its romance, was also dangerously vulnerable to bandits. A caravan laden with silk, precious metals, and gems was a massive moving target. The caravanserai's high walls and guarded gate offered safety above ground, while the hidden underground storage offered an additional, crucial layer of security. A merchant could unload their most valuable items into a concealed cellar, knowing they were safe from any quick raid or casual theft within the fortified complex. The architectural ingenuity goes even further. Studies of surviving caravanserai ruins, such as those along the ancient route in Iran, reveal that these underground areas were often connected by a network of narrow tunnels. This wasn't just about storage, it was about discretion and efficient movement. A merchant dealing in high-value goods could have their items brought up directly into their rented room or a private negotiation chamber without having to carry them through the busy, crowded courtyard where prying eyes might be watching. This allowed for discreet transactions, private inspections of goods, and an extra level of protection for the most precious items. The entire design, from the fortified exterior to the secretive subterranean passages, was a direct physical response to the economic realities of long-distance trade, the need for security, climate control, and privacy. This system of caravanserais, often spaced a day's journey apart, formed the backbone of the Silk Road's economic infrastructure. They were essentially the ancient world's equivalent of a coordinated network of secure logistics hubs, enabling the incredible flow of goods, ideas, and culture between East and West. The very existence and standardized design of these structures funded by kings and wealthy patrons to facilitate and tax trade, shows how commerce directly dictated architectural form. The hidden depths of the caravanserai ensured that commerce didn't just move. It thrived, protected, and preserved in the earth until it was ready to continue its long journey across the known world. While the grand empires of Rome and Persia were building vast subterranean networks to support their trade routes, a different kind of underground revolution was taking shape in the bustling market towns of medieval Europe. Here, the drive wasn't imperial ambition, but pure, unadulterated necessity. Life in the Middle Ages was precarious, marked by the constant threats of famine, feudal conflict, and economic instability. In this environment, the ability to securely store a surplus of goods wasn't just a commercial advantage, it was the very difference between a town thriving or simply disappearing. This pressing need for security and survival led to the creation of incredibly extensive and sophisticated cellar networks right beneath the cobblestone streets of Europe's rising commercial centers. Towns like Bordeaux in France and Bruges in Flanders became legendary for their labyrinthine underworlds. In Bordeaux, the wealth of the wine trade was quite literally built on a foundation of cellars. Merchants carved out vast, cool, humid chambers beneath their homes and shops, perfect for aging barrels of wine to perfection. These weren't isolated pits, they often connected, forming a continuous subterranean layer that mirrored the street plan above. In Bruges, a hub of the wool and cloth trade, these underground spaces stored not only finished textiles but also the vital raw materials like dyestuffs and alum, which were too valuable to leave vulnerable to the damp northern air or to thieves. The sheer scale of these excavations tells us everything about their importance. They represented a massive investment of labor and resources, a testament to how central these hidden vaults were to the local economy. The design of these cellars was a masterclass in medieval practicality. Perhaps the most iconic feature was the simple hatch, set directly into the sidewalk or the floor of a merchant's ground floor shop. Through these openings, goods could be lowered down for safe storage at night and hauled back up for sale each morning, creating a seamless vertical workflow. This wasn't passive storage, it was an active, integrated component of the daily commercial rhythm. But the ingenuity went even further. Many of these cellar networks included discrete escape routes or connecting tunnels to adjacent buildings. While sometimes romanticized as secret passages for smugglers, their primary purpose was far more pragmatic. They offered a means of escape or a way to move goods discreetly during a siege, a fire, or an outbreak of violence. In an era of frequent conflict, this underground connectivity was a form of urban resilience. This architecture also shaped a unique way of life, creating a vertical integration of commerce and domesticity that is still visible in European towns today. A typical merchant's house would function as a combined residence, retail store, and warehouse. The family lived on the upper floors, the shop operated at street level, and the cellar below safeguarded their entire inventory and wealth. This arrangement meant a merchant's home was also their fortress, their bank vault, and their livelihood all in one. Their entire economic existence was stacked vertically, with the most secure and valuable elements buried deepest. This physical layout reinforced a social and economic structure where a family's prosperity was directly tied to their control of space, both above and below ground. The evolution of these spaces offers a clear window into how commerce directly dictated the very layout of medieval towns. The need for large, secure storage pushed architecture downward because expanding outward was often impossible within cramped city walls. This vertical development maximized the use of limited urban space, creating a dense, multi-layered environment where every cubic foot had a purpose. The legacy of this commercial-driven design is still etched into the urban fabric of historic European cities, where the ghosts of ancient trade still reside in the cool, silent darkness beneath our feet. Beneath the practical need for storage and security lay another, more shadowy driver of underground architecture: the powerful, universal human desire for secrecy. While merchants used cellars to keep goods cool, they also discovered these hidden spaces were perfect for keeping transactions quiet. This gave rise to a whole clandestine world operating just below the lawful surface economy, a place where the architecture itself was designed not just to preserve goods but to conceal actions. In the great port city of ancient Alexandria, for instance, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers was said to weave beneath the bustling market districts. While some were used for storage and drainage, others served a far more discreet purpose. They provided a perfect, unseen network for merchants to move and exchange goods away from the watchful eyes of tax collectors and port authorities. A shipment of highly taxed luxury items like silk or incense could be partially offloaded underground, its value hidden from official records, allowing the merchant to avoid hefty duties and increase their profit margin. This wasn't always about trading outright illegal items. Often, it was about circumventing the state's financial claims on commerce, a practice as old as taxation itself. This clandestine use inevitably blurred the lines between the legal and the illegal. These same tunnels that facilitated tax evasion could also host the trade of genuinely banned or dangerous goods. In various cities throughout history, underground spaces have been linked to black markets dealing in everything from outlawed texts and heretical ideas to stolen artifacts and controlled substances. As historian Peter Campbell has pointed out in his work on subterranean landscapes, these spaces weren't just incidental to these economies, they were absolutely crucial. They provided the necessary anonymity for black markets to flourish, creating a parallel economic system that operated in the literal shadows of the official one. The very existence of these spaces acknowledges that commerce has always had a gray area, a dimension that required architectural innovation to survive. And innovate they did. The design of these secretive spaces reveals a fascinating branch of architectural history focused on stealth and secrecy. Entrances were often cunningly disguised. A hidden doorway might be concealed behind a movable market stall, under a rug in a merchant's back room, or accessed through a false back in a wine cellar. Once inside, the design often incorporated features to protect the secrecy of the discussions happening within. Some chambers were built with unusual acoustic properties. Curved walls or specific angles could be used to distort sound, preventing conversations from being clearly overheard from adjacent tunnels or from street-level grates. Others featured multiple escape routes or listening tubes, small, narrow shafts that allowed those inside to hear if anyone was approaching the main entrance from above. This wasn't just simple excavation. It was a sophisticated form of stealth architecture, where every design choice was driven by the commercial need for absolute discretion. The very stones were shaped by the relentless pursuit of hidden profit, proving that the drive for commerce could inspire not only grandeur, but also genius in concealment. But these magnificent underground structures, these marvels of commerce and engineering, did not build themselves. For every cool, secure chamber that preserved a merchant's wealth, there was an immense human cost paid by those whose labor remained in the shadows, quite literally. The glittering world of ancient trade, with its sophisticated storage and secret passages, was built on the backs of society's most marginalized and exploited people: slaves, prisoners of war, indentured laborers, and the desperately poor. Their stories are often the missing chapter in this architectural history, a silent testament to the deep social divisions that commerce could both rely upon and reinforce. In ancient Rome, the immense horrea that stabilized an empire's food supply were constructed by vast teams of unfree labor. These workers, many of them enslaved people captured in military campaigns, toiled under brutal and dangerous conditions. Quarrying the stone, mixing the revolutionary Roman concrete, and excavating the deep foundations was back-breaking work performed with basic tools. They worked in constant peril from tunnel collapses, falling materials, and respiratory ailments caused by inhaling stone dust in poorly ventilated spaces. Theirs was a life of anonymous exertion. While the emperor or the wealthy official who commissioned the warehouse might be celebrated, the thousands of hands that actually built it were seldom deemed worthy of record. They were, in the eyes of the contemporary elite, mere instruments, human tools to be used in the pursuit of greater economic and architectural glory. This dynamic forces us to ask a critical question: who truly built these wonders? We marvel at the ingenuity of the design, but we must also acknowledge the brutal physical reality of its execution. This pattern of invisible labor repeats itself across cultures and centuries. The vast underground city of Derinkuyu, with its intricate network of tunnels and chambers, would have required generations of skilled and unskilled labor to carve from the volcanic rock. While community effort likely played a role, it is almost certain that this grueling work also fell to those lowest on the social ladder. In medieval Europe, the extensive cellars beneath market towns were likely excavated by a mixture of paid laborers, apprentices, and serfs bound to their feudal lords, their contribution erased from the official histories of the merchant guilds that ultimately benefited. The magnificent Basilica Cistern in Constantinople, for all its breathtaking beauty, was almost certainly built by a workforce that included convicts and slaves, a common practice for massive imperial projects. Examining these spaces through this labor lens completely reframes our understanding of them. They are not just testaments to human ingenuity, but also to human suffering and systemic inequality. The very existence of these elaborate subterranean networks was made possible by economic systems that concentrated wealth and power in the hands of a few, who could then command the labor of the many. The security and preservation they offered to the goods of the elite were purchased with the sweat, safety, and freedom of an invisible underclass. This hidden world of commerce was therefore a mirror of the social world above ground, a hierarchy where the comfort and profit of the privileged were fundamentally dependent on the exploited labor of the unseen. This sobering reflection on the human cost of architecture naturally leads us to wonder how such ambitious projects were even possible from a purely technical standpoint. Digging deep into the earth was one thing, but keeping those spaces functional, dry, and safe for people and perishable goods was an entirely different challenge, one that demanded true engineering genius. The ancient builders who carved out these commercial underworlds were master physicists and environmental scientists, working centuries ahead of their time. They understood that a poorly ventilated cellar was a death trap, a moldy ruin waiting to happen, or a suffocating risk to anyone inside. Their solutions, developed through centuries of trial and observation, remain breathtakingly clever even by modern standards. Perhaps the most immediate and vital problem was air. Stagnant air underground becomes heavy with carbon dioxide and moisture, creating the perfect conditions for rot and making it impossible for workers to breathe. The solution was ventilation, and they achieved it with remarkable elegance. The most common method was the simple yet effective ventilation shaft, strategically placed to harness natural air currents. Builders would often construct these shafts with a slight bend or an opening facing the prevailing wind, using the venturi effect to create a suction that pulled stale air up and out while drawing fresh air in from another opening. In some Persian caravanserais, this concept was elevated to an art form with the incorporation of badgers or wind-catching towers. These magnificent structures, which rose high above the desert floor, would capture the cool, prevailing breezes and funnel them down into the underground storage chambers below. This wasn't just simple airflow, it was a form of ancient air conditioning, actively cooling the spaces and keeping the precious silks and spices at a stable, dry temperature. But air was only half the battle. Water was the eternal enemy, seeping in from the walls, pooling on the floors, and creating a dampness that could ruin entire stockpiles in a matter of days. Here, the Romans demonstrated their unparalleled engineering prowess with a material that still mystifies historians today: Roman concrete. Unlike modern concrete, which can weaken over time, Roman concrete used a recipe of lime, volcanic ash, and rubble that actually gained strength when exposed to water, making it miraculously resilient in damp underground environments. They combined this with sophisticated drainage systems. Floors were never truly flat. They were always gently sloped towards a central channel or a sump, a small pit where water would naturally collect and could then be bailed out manually or left to evaporate. This attention to minute detail prevented any water from ever having a chance to stand and cause damage. The Persians, masters of water management in arid landscapes, contributed their own revolutionary technique, the qanat. This was a method for tapping into underground aquifers on mountain slopes and channeling the water gently downhill through a gently sloping tunnel to where it was needed in cities and fields. While qanats themselves were for water supply, the knowledge gained from building these long, stable, subterranean tunnels directly influenced the construction of other underground spaces. The builders understood how to reinforce walls against collapse, how to angle floors for drainage, and most importantly, how to survey and maintain massive subterranean structures. This accumulated knowledge was then applied to the underground storage chambers of caravanserais and marketplaces, ensuring they remained bone dry. The ultimate testament to their success is the sheer longevity of these structures. Walking through the cool, remarkably stable chambers of a Roman horrea that's been standing for 2,000 years, or descending into the vast, perfectly intact Basilica Cistern, is a humbling experience. The air still moves, the walls remain standing, and the floors are dry. They were not built for the short term, they were designed for eternity, to serve the commercial needs of generations far into the future. This incredible durability is the final, silent proof of their engineering mastery, a mastery not driven by abstract theory, but by the very practical, pressing, and profitable demands of commerce itself. Think of these ancient underground spaces not as abandoned relics, but as architectural chameleons, constantly adapting to the shifting tides of human need. The very qualities that made them perfect for commerce, their strength, their security, and their stable environment, made them incredibly valuable real estate for centuries to come, long after their original purpose had faded. This incredible adaptability is one of the most powerful testaments to their brilliant design. They weren't built for a single era, but were crafted to serve generations in ways their original builders could never have imagined. Take the mighty Roman horrea, for example. These formidable warehouses, which once held the grain that fed an empire, found surprising new lives long after the legions were gone. In the early Christian period, their robust, secure, and often windowless structures made them ideal for conversion into crypts and burial chambers for the faithful. Their cool, quiet interiors provided a solemn, protected resting place, a stark contrast to their former bustling commercial activity. In other cases, these vast subterranean halls were repurposed into workshops for craftsmen. The same thick walls that once kept thieves out now contain the noise and mess of blacksmiths, weavers, or potters, their forges and looms taking up residence where sacks of wheat once stood. Perhaps most poetically, some of these storage complexes were simply taken over as homes. Families moved in, partitioning the grand spaces into smaller rooms, their daily lives unfolding within the incredibly durable shell of a 2,000-year-old economic engine. The horrea had stopped feeding Rome, but they were still providing shelter and utility. This spirit of reinvention is vividly clear in Istanbul, where the breathtaking Basilica Cistern, that palace of water we discussed earlier, experienced its own remarkable second act. During the later Byzantine era, historical records suggest that parts of this vast, humid underground reservoir were temporarily used for something utterly unexpected: silk production. The very conditions that made it perfect for storing water, its constant, cool humidity, were also ideal for the delicate and secretive process of sericulture, the cultivation of silkworms. The precious worms and the looms that turned their cocoons into the empire's most valuable export may have found a temporary home within the cistern's columned halls. This transformation from a vital public utility to a clandestine, high-value manufacturing center shows how fluid the function of these spaces could be, directly responding to the most pressing economic opportunities of the age. For archaeologists, these spaces are like a historical palimpsest, a manuscript that has been written on, erased and written on again, with each layer telling a different part of the city's story. When they excavate a subterranean chamber, they aren't just finding evidence of its original construction, they are uncovering centuries of adaptation. They might find a Roman floor littered with amphora shards, a medieval hearth built into a corner, and 19th century refuse scattered about. Each layer of dirt, each modification to a wall, each new type of artifact represents a chapter in the ongoing life of the structure. It tells a continuous story of urban transformation, where the city above ground might change beyond recognition, but the foundational layers below are constantly being rediscovered and reinvented. This incredible ability to pivot, to serve the needs of the present while carrying the ghosts of the past, is the ultimate sign of a truly enduring legacy. These subterranean networks were never truly abandoned. They were just waiting for their next calling. They prove that the most successful architecture is not that which is built for a single, fixed purpose, but that which is so well designed and fundamentally useful that it can gracefully accept a new identity century after century, ensuring its story is never truly over. To truly grasp the breathtaking ambition of ancient subterranean architecture, we must travel to the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, where an entire city was carved into the earth not just for temporary refuge, but for enduring life itself. Derinkuyu is perhaps the most stunning example of how commerce, community, and sheer survival could fuse into a single, monumental underground achievement. While it was far more than just a marketplace, its design reveals that economic activity was absolutely vital to its existence. This was not a mere hiding hole. It was a self-sustaining subterranean metropolis, and its very blueprint proves that protecting a community's wealth and trade goods was just as important as protecting its people. The first thing that strikes you about Derinkuyu is its staggering scale. This was no simple cluster of caves. This was a vertically stacked city descending 18 levels deep into the soft, malleable volcanic rock known as tuff, with estimates suggesting it could have sheltered up to 20,000 people along with their livestock and vital supplies. The engineering is mind-boggling. Each level was connected by a complex web of narrow, sloping passages that could be sealed off from the inside with massive, rolling stone doors, each weighing up to half a ton. These weren't just for privacy. They were a formidable defense system, allowing each section to be isolated in case invaders breached the upper levels. But within this fortified labyrinth, life had to continue, and that meant commerce had to continue as well. Scattered throughout the network of living quarters, churches, and stables, archaeologists have identified distinct commercial spaces. There were large, rounded chambers with shelves carved directly into the walls, perfectly designed for storing amphorae of wine and olive oil, sacks of grain, and other trade commodities. Other rooms, located near major thoroughfares within the complex, feature stone counters and open layouts that suggest they functioned as market stalls or trading posts. Imagine the scene: deep underground, shielded from a siege raging on the surface. Merchants would have bartered for goods, distributing food, tools, and resources to keep the community functioning. The security of the city and the security of its economic assets were one and the same. You couldn't have one without the other. This economic activity was only possible because of the city's brilliant life support systems. Derinkuyu featured an astonishing 52 ventilation shafts, some plunging over 80 meters deep to ensure a constant supply of fresh air to every level, preventing stagnation and allowing for fires to be lit for cooking and warmth. Perhaps most impressively, the builders tapped into an underground river to create a series of wells, providing a permanent, protected water source that meant the city could withstand a prolonged siege indefinitely. This water wasn't just for drinking. It would have been essential for the animals brought underground and for any crafts or food preparation needed to sustain the population. Derinkuyu stands as the ultimate expression of underground architecture driven by existential threat. It shows us that when faced with extreme circumstances, ancient societies didn't just dig holes to hide in. They designed comprehensive, multi-generational solutions that integrated every facet of life, with commerce woven directly into the fabric of its survival. The presence of specialized storage rooms and market spaces proves that protecting the economy was deemed a critical part of protecting the community. This incredible complex forces us to expand our definition of what these hidden worlds were for. They weren't just Chinese letter structures to marketplaces. In places like Derinkuyu, the entire underground city was, in itself, a fortified, functioning economic unit. From the vast, fortified cities of Cappadocia, we now journey to the sun-drenched, labyrinthine alleys of North Africa, where the concept of the hidden commercial underworld takes on a different, yet equally fascinating form. Here, in the heart of ancient cities like Tunis and Marrakech, the air is thick with the scent of cumin and leather, the sound of artisans hammering metal, and the vibrant chaos of the souk. This bustling marketplace seems to be a purely above-ground affair, a dizzying open-air spectacle of commerce. But just beneath the surface of these vibrant streets lies another, quieter world, a hidden layer of cool, shadowy spaces that were absolutely essential to the economic engine of the region. These are the Fondauks, and they represent a unique architectural solution born from the harsh demands of the desert climate and the intricate web of trans-Saharan trade. A Fondauk, sometimes also called a caravanserai in this context, was far more than just a building. It was a multi-purpose commercial complex that served as an inn, a warehouse, a stable, and a workshop all rolled into one. While its above-ground levels housed merchants and their animals around a central courtyard, its true secret lay below. Descending a narrow, often unassuming staircase from the courtyard, one would find themselves in a sprawling subterranean level. The architectural genius here is in the seamless blending. The bustling courtyard was the public face of commerce, a place for negotiation, loading, and unloading. But the subterranean level was its private, protected heart. The transition from the blinding sun and noise of the market to the cool, silent, and dimly lit chambers below is a physical manifestation of moving from the public spectacle of trade to its secure, practical core. The primary driver for this underground architecture was once again the relentless climate. The desert sun could quickly destroy delicate trade goods. Luxurious textiles from Timbuktu, delicate manuscripts, and priceless bundles of spices like saffron and cinnamon would have quickly lost their value if exposed to the extreme heat and dry air. The earth provided a perfect natural insulator. These underground chambers maintained a remarkably stable, cool, and slightly humid environment year-round, acting as a giant passive refrigerator. A merchant could store his valuable goods for weeks or even months, confident they would be preserved in perfect condition until the right buyer came along or the caravan was ready to move on. This wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was a critical factor in enabling long-distance trade across the inhospitable Sahara. But the Fondauks subterranean layers served other, more social functions as well. These quiet, removed spaces were perfect for workshops. The constant temperature and humidity were ideal for delicate crafts like dyeing textiles, where consistent conditions were needed to ensure color fastness, or for scribes and bookbinders working on precious texts. Furthermore, the privacy they offered made them ideal for discreet business meetings. A merchant negotiating a particularly sensitive deal, away from the competitive ears and eyes of the crowded courtyard above, could descend into the cellar to talk in confidence. This added a layer of secrecy and security to transactions, especially for goods that might be subject to higher taxes or were simply of such high value that they required discretion. The influence of this North African model rippled across the Mediterranean. The design of the Fondauk, with its integrated courtyard and subterranean storage, became a blueprint for trade hubs in southern Spain, Sicily, and other parts of the Mediterranean world. It facilitated a profound cultural and economic exchange. Goods from sub-Saharan Africa, gold, ivory, slaves, would be stored in these underground chambers before being traded for goods from Europe and the Middle East. The Fondauk was the neutral, secure ground where these different worlds met and did business. Its very architecture, designed to accommodate and protect the fruits of long-distance trade, made it a catalyst for the cross-pollination of ideas, customs, and commodities, weaving together the economies of Africa, Asia, and Europe in a way that forever shaped the history of the region. The silent, cool chambers beneath the North African souks were not just storage rooms, they were the quiet engines of a vast, interconnected economic network. Beyond their undeniable practical uses, these hidden chambers and passageways also occupied a powerful space in the human imagination. They weren't just seen as cold, dark storage areas. They were often imbued with deep symbolic meaning, connected to ancient myths and supernatural beliefs that added a rich cultural layer to their commercial function. In the minds of many ancient peoples, to descend below ground was to cross a threshold into a realm that was mysterious, sacred, and potentially dangerous, a place closer to the underworld, the domain of ancestors, chthonic deities, and hidden forces that governed fortune and fate. This symbolism profoundly influenced how these spaces were perceived and, consequently, how they were used in daily commerce. In the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, the very cradle of commerce, this connection was particularly strong. The civilizations of Sumer and Akkad had a rich tapestry of mythology where the underworld, known as Ker or Urkala, was a real and potent place. It was not just a land of the dead, but also a source of hidden wealth and abundance from within the earth itself. This belief naturally extended to the man-made spaces that mirrored this underworld. A merchant storing his goods in a deep cellar might have felt he was placing them under the protection of a deity like Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, or that he was entrusting his wealth to the same earthly forces that yielded precious metals and gems. Conversely, these spaces could also be viewed with superstition and fear. A cellar that was too damp, where goods spoiled inexplicably, might be thought to be cursed or inhabited by a malevolent spirit, requiring a ritual or offering before it could be safely used again. This mythological framing wasn't merely abstract. It had a direct impact on commercial practices and the very architecture itself. Archaeologists have found evidence of ritual deposits, small votive statues, inscribed prayers, or foundation offerings placed in the corners of storage cellars beneath markets in ancient Mesopotamian cities like Uruk and Nippur. These were likely placed there by merchants or builders to bless the space, to ensure a bountiful surplus, and to protect the stored goods from both physical and spiritual decay. The design of an entrance might be slightly altered, or a particular stone might be inscribed with a protective symbol, not for structural reasons, but to ward off evil eyes or attract divine favor. The line between practical security and spiritual security was often blurred. A heavy stone door sealed a cellar from thieves, but it also symbolically sealed it from negative influences, creating a protected vault in every sense of the word. This cultural lens allows us to see these spaces not just as engineering projects, but as deeply human ones. The merchant descending into his cellar was engaging in an act that resonated on multiple levels. He was a businessman protecting his inventory, but he was also a participant in an ancient ritual, moving between the world of the living and a mythologized underworld, entrusting his livelihood to forces beyond his control. This belief system provided a framework for understanding the risks and uncertainties of trade. A successful season could be attributed to divine blessing, while a failure could be explained by supernatural displeasure. This symbolic dimension gave meaning to the unpredictable nature of commerce, embedding the very practical act of storage within a larger cosmic order. As trade routes stretched further east, these ideas traveled and mutated, meeting entirely different cultural and religious systems that would interpret the world beneath the marketplace in their own unique and fascinating ways. Now, let's shift our gaze to the east, where ancient civilizations in China and India developed their own breathtakingly sophisticated underground architectures, driven by the same universal needs of commerce, but refined through the lens of unique local ingenuity and belief. Here, the solutions were not just about preserving goods, but mastering the very elements themselves, creating subterranean spaces that were as spiritually significant as they were economically vital. While the Romans built with concrete and the Persians with baked brick, Asian engineers often worked with the earth itself, carving and sculpting it into climate-controlling marvels that served the relentless flow of trade along the Silk Road and beyond. In the vast, sprawling marketplaces of ancient China, merchants faced a particularly delicate challenge: how to preserve some of the world's most valuable and perishable commodities. Tea, that delicate leaf whose flavor could be ruined by a single day of humidity or heat, required perfect conditions. Similarly, rice, the staple of the empire, had to be kept dry and safe from pests to prevent famine. The solution lay beneath the bustling market squares. Chinese merchants and officials developed extensive networks of underground storage vaults, but they took the science of preservation a revolutionary step further with the invention of ice chambers. These were not simple cellars, they were meticulously designed pits, often lined with insulating materials like straw and wood, where ice harvested from mountains in winter or stored from frozen lakes was packed around ceramic jars containing tea, silk, and other delicate goods. This created a primitive but highly effective refrigeration system that could maintain a consistently cool temperature for months, ensuring that the finest teas from Fujian could survive the long, arduous journey to the capital without losing their prized aroma and value. This wasn't just storage, it was the ancient equivalent of a controlled atmospheric warehouse, a testament to a deep understanding of thermodynamics applied directly to the demands of high-value commerce. This architectural ingenuity flourished along the Great Silk Road, where the grand bazaars of Central Asian cities served as melting pots of ideas and goods. While influenced by the Persian Caravanserai model, these trading hubs developed their own distinct subterranean features. In cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, the sprawling market complexes incorporated deep, multi-level basements beneath the domed shops above. These underground levels provided the same crucial benefits of security and climate control found elsewhere, but with local adaptations. The construction often utilized thick, sun-dried mud bricks, a material that provided superb natural insulation against the extreme continental climate, scorching summers and freezing winters. The designs also frequently included sophisticated air vents based on the same wind catch principles as the Persian badger, but tailored to local wind patterns. These subterranean layers were the silent, stable foundation upon which the vibrant, noisy commerce above depended, allowing the Silk Road to function not just as a route, but as a continuous, climate-controlled supply chain. Perhaps the most uniquely beautiful fusion of utility, architecture, and social space is found in the Indian subcontinent with its magnificent stepwells. While not exclusively built for markets, many of these breathtaking structures were strategically located near major trading hubs and caravan routes. They were far more than just sources of water. They were brilliantly designed social and commercial cooling centers. A stepwell, or bayoli, is essentially a massive, inverted temple carved down into the earth, featuring a long staircase of steps that descends to the water table at the bottom. As one walks down, the air temperature drops significantly. The sheer mass of the earth and the evaporating water from the reservoir created a naturally cool, humid microclimate that was a lifesaver for weary traders and their animals after a long journey under the blistering sun. The steps themselves and the numerous pavilions and niches built into the sides of the well provided ample space for merchants to rest, negotiate deals, and even temporarily store goods that benefited from the cool, moist air. It was a place where the practical need for water seamlessly merged with the economic need for a comfortable place to conduct business, all achieved through a monumental act of underground engineering that turned a basic necessity into a profound architectural experience. What these diverse examples from Asia reveal is a fascinating global pattern. From Rome to Constantinople, from Persia to India and China, we see the same core drivers: climate control, security, and economic efficiency repeatedly pushing architecture downward. Yet, the solutions are never carbon copies. They are beautifully adapted to local conditions, materials, and cultural practices. The Chinese ice chamber, the mud brick vaults of Samarkand, and the sculpted caverns of Indian stepwells all solve the same problem, but they do so using the resources and wisdom of their specific environment. This suggests a powerful cross-pollination of ideas along trade routes. A Persian merchant might have seen a ventilation design in a Chinese market cellar and brought the concept home, where it was then adapted using local materials and building techniques. This created a rich, global tapestry of architectural innovation, where commerce acted as the thread, weaving together the best ideas from across the ancient world and depositing them in the cool, dark earth beneath its busiest marketplaces. Yet for all their resilience across millennia, these incredible subterranean networks now face a set of modern threats that their ancient builders could never have anticipated. The very qualities that made them perfect for long-term preservation, their seclusion, their stable environments, their invisibility, now make them incredibly vulnerable to the relentless pressures of our contemporary world. Preserving this hidden heritage is a race against time, a complex battle fought with specialized tools and a desperate need for awareness, because losing these spaces would mean irrevocably erasing entire chapters from the story of human civilization. The dangers they face are multifaceted and often interconnected. Rampant urbanization is perhaps the most immediate threat. As cities expand upward and outward with new foundations, subway tunnels, and underground parking garages, they can accidentally puncture, destabilize, or completely obliterate ancient chambers that lie undetected just below the surface. In places like Istanbul, every new construction project is a potential gamble with history, as the city is built layer upon ancient layer. Then there is the insidious damage caused by climate change. Increased and more intense rainfall leads to rising water tables and catastrophic flooding in areas that have been dry for centuries, silently dissolving mud brick walls, washing away ancient plasters, and causing sudden, devastating collapses in spaces that have stood for thousands of years. This is compounded by simple neglect. Many of these sites are not grand, tourist-ready attractions. They are forgotten cellars beneath private properties, unmarked tunnels on the edge of towns, their owners unaware of their historical significance until a wall gives way. The work of conservation itself is fraught with unique difficulties. You cannot simply apply standard above-ground archaeological methods to a fragile, buried environment. Excavation can be dangerously destabilizing. Simply introducing modern lighting can encourage the growth of algae and mold on surfaces that have been dark for ages. The air itself becomes a variable to control. Opening a sealed space to the outside world can alter its humidity and temperature, triggering the decay of organic materials that were perfectly preserved for centuries. Specialists in geoarchaeology and conservation science must work in concert, using non-invasive techniques like ground-penetrating radar and 3D laser scanning to map the slightest voids and vibrations without ever touching a stone. Thankfully, there are dedicated guardians in this fight. International organizations like UNESCO grant World Heritage status to crown jewels like the Cappadocia region, providing crucial funding, expertise, and a global platform that encourages protective legislation and sustainable tourism. But for every Derinkuyu, there are 100 lesser-known sites, a modest network of medieval merchant cellars in a French village, a forgotten Persian storage caravanserai on a remote stretch of the Silk Road that lack any such protection. Their fate often rests on the shoulders of underfunded local historians and passionate volunteer groups who fight an uphill battle against developers and bureaucratic indifference. The solution requires a delicate and innovative balancing act. How do we allow a modern city to grow and thrive without sacrificing the ancient world that lies beneath it? The answer is increasingly found in technology and creative thinking. Digital preservation is becoming a lifesaver. Through detailed laser scanning and photogrammetry, we can create perfect, millimeter-accurate digital twins of these spaces. This means that even if a site is eventually lost, every crack, carving, and architectural detail is preserved forever in a virtual format, accessible to researchers and the public for generations to come. Furthermore, sustainable tourism, when managed carefully, can be a powerful force for preservation. The revenue from responsible visitorship can fund vital conservation work, while carefully managed access routes and controlled environments can protect the fragile sites from the damage of too many footsteps. The goal is not to lock these places away, but to find ways for them to tell their stories without being loved to death. The loss of even one of these underground market spaces is not just the loss of a room, it is the silencing of a direct voice from our past, a unique window into the daily economic lives of our ancestors and the brilliant architectural solutions they devised. This urgent effort to protect what remains naturally makes us wonder what lessons these ancient designs might still hold for our own future. It turns out the brilliant minds of antiquity were onto something profound. and today's architects and urban planners are looking back to these ancient subterranean marvels to solve some of our most pressing modern challenges. We're now witnessing a fascinating revival, a full-circle moment where the timeless principles of natural cooling, security, and space efficiency are being re-engineered for a new era of sustainable urban development. The very same logic that drove a Roman engineer to design a ventilated grain store or a Persian builder to carve out a cool, hidden caravanserai is now inspiring a wave of innovative projects that look downward to build a better future above ground. Consider the modern subterranean shopping mall, a staple in many of the world's densest cities. While they might seem like a product of 20th century concrete obsession, their conceptual roots are ancient. Places like the Path Network in Toronto, Canada, or the Réseau in Montreal are essentially climate-controlled modern horrea for people and products. They allow commerce to thrive through bitter Canadian winters and humid summers, much like their Roman predecessors insulated trade from the elements. But the latest innovations go even further, consciously borrowing ancient passive cooling techniques. New markets and data centers are increasingly incorporating passive ventilation systems that function exactly like the wind-catching towers of ancient Persia. These modern badgers are sophisticated architectural features designed to channel cool night air down into underground spaces, flushing out heat and drastically reducing the reliance on energy-guzzling air conditioning. It's not a direct copy, but a high-tech homage, a recognition that the old way of working with nature rather than against it is perhaps the most advanced technology we have. This ancient wisdom is becoming crucial in our fight against climate change. The quest for climate-resilient infrastructure has never been more urgent, and the Earth's natural insulating properties offer a powerful tool. Architects are now designing underground storage facilities for food and water that require a fraction of the energy of their above-ground counterparts. The principle is identical to that of the medieval European wine cellar or the Chinese ice chamber. Use the mass of the Earth to maintain a stable, temperate environment. In regions facing extreme heat, burying critical infrastructure like power substations or water treatment plants protects them from surface-level disasters and reduces the urban heat island effect. We are relearning what ancient merchants knew instinctively, that the ground beneath our feet is not empty space, but a valuable natural resource for regulating our environment. The ancient drive for security and space optimization is also seeing a powerful resurgence. As urban land becomes astronomically expensive and precious, the economic logic of building down becomes irresistible. Cities from Helsinki to Singapore are actively developing what they call their underground master plans, mapping out vast multi-use spaces for transportation, retail, storage, and even sports facilities deep below the city. This isn't just about saving space, it's about creating redundancy and security for the entire urban population. These modern underworlds are designed as shelters for emergencies, harkening back to the defensive purpose of places like Derinkuyu. They represent our understanding that a resilient city needs depth, literally and figuratively, to withstand the shocks of the 21st century, from natural disasters to pandemics. This isn't mere nostalgia, it's a practical, evidence-based revival. The enduring lesson from these ancient spaces is that the most sustainable and resilient design is often the one that leverages the free and abundant resources of the natural world. The Roman concrete recipe, which actually gets stronger with seawater, is now the subject of intense scientific study as we search for more durable, eco-friendly building materials. The Qanat system of ancient Persia is being studied as a model for sustainable water management in arid regions. By looking to the past, we are not retreating, we are advancing with the wisdom of centuries guiding us. These ancient commercial architectures, born from practicality and refined over millennia, offer a blueprint for building urban spaces that are not just efficient and profitable, but also harmonious with the planet and resilient enough to endure for generations to come. At first glance, the decision to dig seems counterintuitive. Why would any society choose the most difficult, dangerous, and expensive path? Moving earth by hand, reinforcing tunnels against collapse, engineering ventilation and drainage. Every step of underground construction demanded a staggering investment of labor, time, and materials, far exceeding the cost of simply building another wooden shed or mud brick shop at ground level. The initial price tag was enormous. So what was the compelling economic logic that convinced city planners, merchant guilds, and emperors to literally bank on going underground? The answer lies in a sophisticated form of ancient cost-benefit analysis, where the steep upfront investment was willingly paid for a powerful suite of long-term advantages that directly fueled economic resilience and growth. The most immediate and calculable return was the drastic reduction in spoilage. Imagine a merchant who imports a shipload of expensive Egyptian grain into ancient Rome. Left in a surface warehouse, a significant portion could be ruined by rain, pests, or mildew, turning a potential profit into a total loss. But stored in a climate-controlled underground horrea with its raised floors and constant cool temperature, nearly 100% of that grain could be preserved for months. That difference wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was the difference between economic stability and catastrophe. For a merchant, it meant protecting their entire livelihood. For a city like Rome, it meant averting famine and the riots that followed. The cost of digging the cellar was a one-time expense, but the savings from preventing spoilage compounded year after year, season after season, making the investment incredibly shrewd. This same principle applied to every perishable good, from olive oil and wine in Europe to spices and silk along the Silk Road. The underground space acted as a giant insurance policy, and the premiums paid in excavation costs were dwarfed by the massive payouts in preserved wealth. Then there was the undeniable value of security. Building a secure above-ground warehouse required thick walls, barred windows, and a small army of guards, all recurring costs that never went away. An underground space, by its very nature, started with a massive defensive advantage. Its entrance could be hidden, minimized, and turned into a formidable choke point. The earth itself was a barrier against thieves and raiders. This dramatically reduced the ongoing costs of protection and the devastating financial losses from theft. For a merchant caravan arriving at a Persian caravanserai after months on the road, the ability to lock their most valuable goods, silk, gems, precious metals, in a hidden subterranean vault was priceless. It allowed them to rest and negotiate from a position of strength and safety. The initial capital spent to carve out that secure space was effectively an investment in risk mitigation, protecting mobile capital that was otherwise incredibly vulnerable. In an era without insurance companies, this architectural security was the best way to safeguard a business's assets. Perhaps the most forward-thinking economic driver was urban land value. In any densely populated ancient city from Rome to Constantinople to Chang'an, the space within the protective city walls was at an absolute premium. It was the most valuable real estate in the known world, needed for housing, temples, government buildings, and the marketplaces themselves. Using this incredibly costly surface area for simple storage was a grossly inefficient use of space. It was the economic equivalent of using a plot of gold to grow potatoes. Going underground solved this perfectly. It allowed a merchant or a city to have its cake and eat it too. They could utilize the surface for high-value retail activity, customer interaction, and luxury housing, while pushing the bulky, utilitarian need for storage down into a cheaper dimension, the third dimension below. This was a brilliant form of spatial arbitrage. By investing in depth, they freed up the surface for activities that generated more tax revenue, more commerce, and more social prestige. The underground, therefore, wasn't just a storage area. It was a critical tool for maximizing the economic productivity of every single square foot of a city. This allocation of immense resources reveals the supreme priority that ancient societies placed on commerce. The fact that kings and emperors would commission these projects, that wealthy merchants would collectively fund them, and that cities would organize their very layout around them shows that facilitating trade was understood to be the primary engine of urban prosperity. This wasn't a short-term speculative gamble. It was a strategic investment in public infrastructure designed to yield returns for generations. Economic historians see these subterranean networks not as mysterious architectural quirks, but as the physical manifestation of a sophisticated economic mindset, one that understood capital investment, long-term planning, and the fundamental importance of protecting the supply chains that held civilization together. The very stones beneath these ancient markets tell us a story not just of engineering, but of profound economic intelligence. This calculated drive for profit and efficiency, however, had an unexpected and wonderfully human side effect, transforming these hidden utilitarian spaces into something far more social and communal. But these hidden chambers were far more than just vaults for goods and coins. They pulsed with a different, warmer kind of life, the life of a community. Beyond their commercial purpose, these subterranean spaces naturally evolved into vital social hubs, the living rooms of the city where the very human need for connection flourished alongside trade. Imagine a typical medieval European town on a bitterly cold, rain-lashed day. The open-air market above is deserted, the streets turned to mud, but descending into the vast, interconnected cellars beneath the guild halls, you would find a scene of warmth and vibrant activity. The same sturdy stone walls that kept thieves out now kept the harsh weather at bay, and the same space that stored barrels of wine and ale by night was now filled with townspeople sharing a hot meal, a drink, and the latest news. This multifunctionality was key to the economic resilience of these communities. Commerce was never just a simple exchange of goods for coin. It was a complex web of relationships built on trust, reputation, and mutual support. A merchant wasn't just selling to a faceless customer. They were building a rapport with a neighbor. By providing a neutral, sheltered space for people to gather away from the elements, these underground areas actively fostered the social networks that made the entire economic system work. Deals were solidified with a handshake and a shared cup of wine in a cellar tavern long before any formal contract was drawn up. A craftsman might hear about a new supply of quality leather from a traveler in a subterranean inn, intelligence that could make his business for the coming season. The gossip and news exchanged in these spaces were a form of social currency, a way to gauge the mood of the town, assess the creditworthiness of a fellow merchant, or learn about a potential opportunity. This informal exchange of information was the lifeblood of the medieval economy, and it flowed most freely in these casual, communal settings. These spaces became deeply embedded in the very cultural fabric of the city, serving as the backdrop for both the mundane and the magnificent. The same cellar that hosted a quiet business meeting by day might be transformed by night for a raucous feast celebrating a successful harvest or a religious holiday. In some towns, the largest and most secure underground chambers were the only spaces capacious enough to host the entire guild for a banquet, or to provide a venue for traveling players to perform their mysteries and moralities during a festival. Over time, these uses layered meaning upon the stone walls. A merchant descending into his storage cellar might also remember the wedding celebration held there for his daughter, or the tense town meeting where a dispute with a neighboring lord was resolved. The architecture ceased to be purely utilitarian. It was saturated with memory and social significance, a physical anchor for the community's shared identity. This profound social role reveals that the true genius of these underground architectures was their ability to support a holistic form of urban living, where commerce, community, and culture were not separate spheres, but deeply intertwined threads in the rich tapestry of city life. Yet for all their brilliance and benefit, this hidden world of commerce was not without its own shadowy perils. The very same qualities that made these subterranean spaces so invaluable, their seclusion, their complexity, their separation from the world above, also made them vulnerable to a host of dangers that could turn a merchant's asset into a death trap in an instant. The historical record is punctuated with sobering accounts of these risks, reminding us that for every advantage gained by going underground, there was a potential cost, a trade-off that required constant vigilance and responsible stewardship. The most immediate and terrifying threat was that of structural collapse. Unlike buildings on the surface, an underground chamber's ceiling was not just a roof, it was the entire weight of the city above, held in place by the skill of its builders and the strength of its supports. Time, water damage, or even a minor tremor could weaken these ancient structures. In Rome, there are accounts of entire sections of the horrea or interconnected cellars giving way, sometimes burying not only valuable goods but also the workers and merchants inside. The infamous locus subterraneus collapses mentioned in some chronicles were not just economic disasters, they were human tragedies. The risk was even greater in places like Cappadocia, where the soft, tough rock, while easy to carve, could become unstable, especially if ventilation systems failed and moisture built up, subtly softening the walls until they could no longer bear the load. This constant fear of being buried alive meant that maintenance was not a mere chore. It was a matter of life and death, a never-ending battle against the relentless pressure of the earth itself. Then there was the ever-present danger of fire. While the stone and earth construction might seem immune, the contents of these chambers were often highly flammable. Stored grain dust can be explosive, textiles and wooden barrels burn fiercely, and the oil used in lamps for illumination was a constant hazard. A single overturned lamp in a poorly ventilated cellar filled with dry goods could create an inferno with no escape. The confined space would trap smoke and heat with terrifying efficiency, and the lack of easy access for water made fighting such a blaze nearly impossible. Furthermore, a fire underground was uniquely insidious. It could smolder for days, hidden from view, before suddenly breaking through to the surface or asphyxiating anyone who entered unaware. This risk forced the development of some of the earliest building codes and safety protocols, as guilds and city authorities struggled to regulate the storage of hazardous materials and mandate the use of stone containers and safe lighting in these vulnerable spaces. Beyond these physical dangers, the secrecy of the underground world naturally lent itself to more nefarious uses. The same hidden tunnel that allowed a merchant to avoid a tax official could also facilitate the smuggling of truly dangerous or banned commodities. While much illicit trade was relatively benign, like avoiding import duties, these spaces also became havens for activities that posed a serious threat to the social order. The trade in stolen goods, weapons, and even poisons could flourish in these unmonitored corners. In some port cities, the labyrinthine cellars beneath markets were linked to a darker network of tunnels that connected to the docks, allowing for the discreet and horrific movement of enslaved people, hidden from public view until they could be sold. This aspect forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The architectural innovation that protected legitimate commerce could also empower its most predatory and immoral forms. The same design that provided security for a spice merchant could also provide anonymity for a criminal, challenging authorities and creating a constant cat and mouse game between regulators and those who operated in the literal underworld of the economy. These inherent dangers reveal that the story of these subterranean spaces is not one of unalloyed progress. It is a story of trade-offs. The drive for profit could, and sometimes did, incentivize corner-cutting and negligent practices. A merchant might ignore a cracked ceiling support to avoid the cost of repair, or a city official might turn a blind eye to unsafe conditions in a politically connected merchant's cellar. The pursuit of efficiency could override the imperative of safety. This balanced view is crucial. It reminds us that these architectural marvels were not static monuments but dynamic, sometimes precarious, environments that reflected the full spectrum of human behavior, from the heights of collaborative ingenuity to the depths of reckless greed. Acknowledging these shadows doesn't diminish their achievement. It makes their story more human, more complex, and ultimately more real, as we prepare to consider the profound and lasting cultural legacy this hidden world left behind. This incredible flow of goods along routes like the Silk Road did far more than just move silk and spices. It functioned as a massive, slow-moving conveyor belt for human ingenuity. The designs for these brilliant subterranean market spaces didn't just appear independently in isolation. They spread, mutated, and improved through a constant process of cultural cross-pollination, with merchants and builders acting as the unwitting agents of this architectural exchange. A trader from Persia, resting in the cool, secure depths of a caravanserai, wouldn't just notice the valuable goods for sale. He would absorb the very design of the space itself, mentally noting the clever ventilation shaft or the discreet tunnel connecting the storage cellar to the merchant rooms. Later, when building his own warehouse back in Constantinople or financing a new trading post on the Black Sea coast, he might suggest incorporating those same features. This is how ideas traveled, not in formal blueprints, but in the lived experience of those who use these spaces every day. We can trace this fascinating migration of design principles with a clear example. The Persian Caravanserai, with its fortified courtyard, integrated stables, and most importantly, its expansive, climate-controlled underground storage chambers, became a model that was eagerly adopted and adapted. Byzantine engineers, ever the practical successors to the Romans, saw the immense value in this design for their own bustling trade networks. They began incorporating these elements into their own pandaceia, which were similar inns and trading posts. The core idea of a secure, multi-functional complex with dedicated subterranean storage spread westward, influencing the development of medieval European institutions like the Fondauks in Italian merchant cities. These were essentially caravanserais for European traders operating in foreign ports, and they invariably featured massive, vaulted cellars for storing goods like wool, wine, and alum, directly echoing the functional needs met by their Persian predecessors centuries earlier. But this exchange was never a simple act of copying. It was a process of creative adaptation, a dialogue between a good idea and local conditions. A Persian badger or wind-catching tower, designed to funnel dry desert breezes into an underground chamber, might not be effective in the humid climate of a coastal Mediterranean city. So local builders would adapt the principle, perhaps creating deeper ventilation shafts that used the temperature differential between the surface and the cool earth to create a convection current that drew air downward. They might use different materials, local stone instead of baked brick, but the underlying goal remained identical: to harness natural forces for the preservation of commercial wealth. This beautiful adaptation shows that it was the core concept that was being traded, not just a rigid set of instructions. And of course, the merchants carried so much more than architectural concepts in their packs. Woven into the fabric of trade were threads of story, belief, and custom. A Babylonian merchant might explain the ritual he performed to bless his underground storage locker, a prayer to a chthonic deity for protection. A Chinese trader might describe the intricate method his people used to pack tea with ice in deep pits. These stories and practices would swirl together in the crowded courtyards and shadowy cellars of these trading hubs, influencing not just how people built, but how they thought about the very act of storing and protecting wealth. The symbolism of the underground as a place of both danger and abundance, a concept found in Mesopotamian myth, could easily find a home in the beliefs of a Greek merchant who already associated the underworld with the god of wealth, Platon. This was a holistic cultural exchange where the architecture shaped the rituals and the rituals, in turn, gave deeper meaning to the architecture. The stunning global similarities we find in these spaces, from the raised floors of Roman horrea to the air vents of Middle Eastern cellars, are not a coincidence. They are powerful testimony to the interconnectedness of ancient economies. They reveal that merchants from Rome to Chang'an were all grappling with the same universal challenges: how to stop things from rotting, how to keep them safe from thieves, and how to conduct business away from prying eyes. The solutions they developed, while beautifully diverse in their execution, speak a common language of practicality and innovation. This shared architectural legacy is one of the earliest and most tangible forms of globalization, proving that long before the internet or the airplane, the world was already deeply linked by a network of trade routes that carried not only spices and silks, but the very ideas that built our civilizations. This rich history of exchange now makes the modern quest to find and understand these lost spaces more urgent and exciting than ever before. For centuries, the full scale of these commercial underworlds remained a matter of legend and fragmented memory, their entrances bricked up or buried under the accumulated layers of modern cities. They were ghost stories whispered by historians, hinted at in ancient texts, but their true scope was unimaginable. That all changed with the advent of modern archaeology, a field that has utterly revolutionized our understanding of these spaces, transforming them from myth into mapped reality. The journey of rediscovery is a thrilling blend of cutting-edge science and old-fashioned historical detective work, where each new scan and each careful excavation peels back another layer of time to reveal the astonishing sophistication of ancient urban planning. The real game changer has been the development of non-invasive technologies that allow us to see through the earth without ever lifting a shovel. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, is like giving archaeologists a powerful set of X-ray glasses. By sending high-frequency radio waves into the ground and measuring the signals that bounce back, researchers can create detailed three-dimensional maps of voids, walls, and artifacts hidden deep beneath the surface. This technology is incredibly sensitive. It can distinguish between a natural fissure in the bedrock and a human-carved tunnel, or detect the subtle disturbance in soil that indicates a long, rotted wooden support beam. In a city like Rome, where digging is often impossible due to the modern metropolis above, GPR has been invaluable. Surveys around the Forum Romanum and the Palatine Hill have revealed a stunning honeycomb of previously unknown chambers and passageways branching out from known horrea, suggesting the underground storage network was far more extensive than anyone had previously dreamed. But the technological toolkit doesn't stop there. LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, uses laser pulses from an aircraft to create incredibly precise topographic maps. even penetrating dense forest canopies to reveal the faint outlines of long-buried structures. While often used for surveying rural landscapes, it's also been employed to map the subtle subsidence of land in urban areas that can indicate a large underground cavity. Then there's 3D laser scanning, which is used once a site is accessible. Archaeologists can scan every inch of a discovered chamber, capturing millions of data points to create a perfect photorealistic digital model. This allows them to study the site in minute detail from anywhere in the world, to measure the precise angle of a wall, or to even simulate airflow and acoustics to understand how the space truly functioned. These digital twins are also a crucial preservation tool, creating a permanent record of a site that might be vulnerable to damage after exposure. The discoveries pouring in from these technologies are constantly forcing us to rewrite the history books. In Istanbul, ongoing investigations around the site of the Theodosian harbor have uncovered a mind-boggling complex of underground grain silos and warehouses that service the city. The scale suggests a highly centralized, state-controlled food distribution system that was far more advanced than the simple free market model we once imagined. Each new chamber they find adds another piece to the puzzle, revealing a hidden logistics network that was the true engine of the city's economy. In Rome, the use of these tools is helping to finally distinguish between different types of underground structures. They can now differentiate a commercial horrea from a private residential cellar, a sacred mithraeum, or a section of the city's sewer system, giving us a much clearer and more nuanced picture of how the ancient city was organized, layer by layer, both above and below the street. This process of rediscovery is a deeply human endeavor as much as a scientific one. It often starts with a curious homeowner in Bruges noticing a strange damp patch on their basement wall, leading to the discovery of a forgotten medieval tunnel. Or it's a construction crew in Naples digging a new subway line who suddenly break through into an ornate, painted cellar from the Roman era filled with intact amphorae. These accidental finds then trigger a full-scale archaeological investigation, where the high-tech gear is brought in to see what else is down there without causing further disturbance. It's a delicate dance between past and present, a race to document and understand before the relentless march of modern development continues. Each find, whether a grand cistern or a simple storage pit filled with merchant seals, is a direct message from the past, showing us not just what they built, but how they lived and traded. This incredible journey of uncovering lost worlds naturally makes us wonder what still lies hidden, waiting for the right technology or the lucky accident to bring it back into the light. And this is just the beginning. The future of uncovering these commercial underworlds is brighter and more thrilling than ever before, powered by a new generation of technology that promises to reveal secrets we haven't even thought to look for. We are on the cusp of a golden age of discovery, where the focus is expanding beyond the well-trodden paths of the Mediterranean and the Silk Road to the forgotten and overlooked corners of the ancient world. Imagine the possibilities in sub-Saharan Africa, where vast and powerful trading empires like Great Zimbabwe and the kingdoms of Mali and Ghana rose to incredible wealth through their control of gold, salt, and other commodities. Their bustling market centers must have required sophisticated storage and security, yet their subterranean architectures remain almost entirely unexplored. The same is true for the dense jungles of Southeast Asia, where the Khmer Empire's Angkor was one of the largest pre-industrial cities in the world, a metropolis sustained by a complex economy that almost certainly left behind a hidden, underground footprint waiting for our ground-penetrating radar to find it. These new frontiers promise to rewrite our global understanding of trade, proving that the drive to protect commerce by building downward was a universal human impulse, not just a feature of Western or Middle Eastern civilizations. But the tools of discovery are evolving beyond mere excavation. The most exciting development is the rise of virtual archaeology, where we no longer need to physically disturb a site to experience it. There is a massive and growing effort to use photogrammetry and three-dimensional laser scanning to create perfect digital twins of these underground complexes. The goal is to then reconstruct them in immersive virtual reality, allowing anyone, anywhere in the world to don a headset and take a guided tour through the cool, echoing halls of a Roman horrea or navigate the narrow, torch-lit tunnels beneath a medieval market square. This isn't just about spectacular entertainment, it's a powerful educational and preservation tool. Students of history could literally walk through these spaces, gaining an intuitive understanding of scale, layout, and function that a textbook could never provide. For sites that are too fragile for public access or have been lost to modern construction, virtual reality becomes a digital time machine, preserving them for eternity and making this hidden heritage accessible to all. This ambitious future is only possible through a new model of interdisciplinary collaboration. The lone archaeologist with a brush and trowel is now part of a much larger team that includes geophysicists who operate the radar equipment, software engineers who write the algorithms to process the immense datasets, structural engineers who advise on the stability of ancient masonry, and digital artists who bring the ruins back to life with painstaking historical accuracy. This fusion of fields, often called digital humanities, is breaking down the old walls between science and art. It allows us to ask bigger questions and get more complete answers. We can now not only map a tunnel system but also simulate the airflow within it to understand its ventilation efficiency, or analyze the soil chemistry on its floor to determine exactly what goods were stored there centuries ago. This holistic approach treats these spaces not as static ruins but as dynamic, functioning systems, and in doing so, it reveals the brilliant, practical intelligence of the people who designed them. The ultimate aim of all this effort is to ensure that the secrets of these ancient marketplaces are not just revealed, but truly appreciated in their full context. Every new scan, every virtual reconstruction, and every interdisciplinary study adds another piece to the grand puzzle of our shared human story. They show us that our ancestors were not primitive. They were ingenious problem solvers whose economic ambitions drove them to create some of the most durable and clever architecture the world has ever known. By committing to this forward-looking exploration, we make a promise to future generations that this hidden history will be saved, studied, and celebrated, ensuring that the silent, stone voices from beneath our feet continue to tell their fascinating tales of commerce, community, and survival for centuries to come. When we step back and look at the grand tapestry of these hidden commercial worlds, a profound truth emerges. This isn't just a story about clever storage solutions or ancient engineering tricks. It is a powerful testament to a fundamental driving force in human history, our relentless, ingenious capacity to innovate in the face of practical necessity. These subterranean networks represent a breathtaking fusion of three powerful elements. First, the raw, undeniable pressure of economic need, the need to protect wealth, to preserve food, to gain a competitive edge. Second, the brilliant application of engineering skill, where builders became masters of physics, geology, and environmental science without ever knowing those terms. And third, a remarkable cultural adaptation, where these practical spaces absorbed the beliefs, superstitions, and social structures of the people who used them, becoming woven into the very identity of a city. This legacy shows us that commerce has never been a passive force. it has always been one of the most powerful catalysts for architectural and urban progress. We often think of grand cathedrals or imperial palaces as the defining structures of ancient civilizations, but we must now add the humble, hidden market cellar and the vast, fortified warehouse to that list. The relentless pursuit of trade didn't just shape individual buildings, it literally shaped the foundations of urban landscapes, creating a dual-layer city where life and business thrived both above and below. The very layout of ancient Rome, Constantinople, and countless medieval towns was dictated by this vertical integration of economic space. The decision of where to dig, what to store, and how to connect these spaces underground directly influenced the flow of streets, the location of squares, and the density of neighborhoods above. Commerce was the invisible hand that sculpted the city in 3 dimensions. And perhaps the most thrilling aspect of this story is its breathtaking relevance to our own modern challenges. The ancient builders of the horrea and the caravanserais were grappling with problems we still face today: how to manage resources efficiently, how to build resilient systems that can withstand shocks, and how to create sustainable environments in the face of a challenging climate. Their solutions, passive cooling, natural insulation, and multifunctional use of space, are not outdated curiosities. They are a masterclass in biomimicry and sustainable design that we are only now rediscovering. In an era of climate change, the principle of using the Earth's mass to regulate temperature is a powerful alternative to energy-intensive air conditioning. In megacities where land is impossibly expensive, the logic of building downward to free up surface space for living and green areas is more compelling than ever. These ancient spaces force us to rethink our definition of innovation. We tend to associate it with something new, complex, and digital. But the innovation on display beneath these marketplaces is of a different, more profound kind. It is the innovation of elegance, of simplicity, of working in harmony with natural forces rather than overpowering them with brute technological force. It is a reminder that sometimes the most advanced solution is the one that has been quietly tested and perfected over millennia. The Roman concrete that grows stronger with seawater, the Persian wind catcher that cools without electricity, the Chinese ice chamber that refrigerates without moving parts. These are not primitive technologies. They are sophisticated, time-tested answers to eternal human problems. This hidden history ultimately tells a story of profound human resourcefulness. It shows us that when presented with a challenge, be it spoilage, theft, or extreme weather, our ancestors did not simply give up. They looked for a solution in the most unexpected places, even if it meant digging deep into the earth itself. They observed the world around them, learned its secrets, and applied that knowledge with brilliant practicality. This spirit of creative problem-solving, driven by the universal language of commerce, is a shared human inheritance. It connects the Roman engineer designing a ventilated grain store to the modern architect planning a subterranean data center. The materials and scales may change, but the core impulse remains identical: to use our ingenuity to build a more secure, efficient, and resilient world. This legacy is not buried in the past. It is a living blueprint waiting beneath our feet to inspire the next chapter of human innovation. So as our journey through these hidden worlds comes to a close, we're left with a powerful realization. The story of these subterranean spaces is so much more than a tale of ancient engineering. It's a profound testament to the incredible, lasting power of commerce to shape human civilization, quite literally from the ground down. From the climate-controlled horrea of Rome to the fortified caravanserais of Persia, from the social cellars of medieval Europe to the ingenious ice chambers of ancient China, we see a universal human impulse. Faced with the practical challenges of trade spoilage, theft, extreme weather, our ancestors didn't just adapt, they innovated. They looked downward into the earth itself and found brilliant, elegant solutions that did far more than just protect goods. They protected entire economies, fostered communities, and facilitated a cross-cultural exchange that wove the world closer together. These spaces were never just cold, dark holes in the ground. They were dynamic, multi-layered environments that reflected the full spectrum of the human experience. They were places of calculation and security, where a merchant's wealth was safeguarded. They were places of connection and community, where deals were sealed with a handshake and news was exchanged alongside goods. And often, they were places imbued with deep cultural and even spiritual significance, where the practical act of storage was intertwined with myths of the underworld and rituals for good fortune. This fusion of pure function with deeper meaning is what makes their legacy so enduring. It shows us that for ancient societies, commerce wasn't a separate, purely transactional part of life. It was deeply embedded in the social, spiritual, and architectural fabric of the city. And that legacy is anything but dead. It lives on every time a modern architect designs a building with passive cooling features inspired by ancient wind catchers, or when an urban planner looks beneath a city to solve today's challenges of density and sustainability. The principles mastered thousands of years ago, harnessing the Earth's mass for insulation, creating secure and efficient spaces, maximizing valuable urban real estate, are more relevant than ever. These ancient builders have become our unlikely collaborators, their time-tested wisdom offering us clues for building a more resilient future. The next time you walk through a bustling city street or descend into a modern subway station, take a moment to remember that you are walking atop a hidden history of innovation. The drive that built the world beneath our feet is the same drive that builds our world today. It's a story that reminds us of our shared ingenuity and the endless, fascinating ways our need to connect and trade has literally shaped the world we live in. We would love to hear which of these subterranean marvels fascinated you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this descent into history's hidden layers, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the mysteries of our past. Thank you for watching.